And we are live on YouTube now. So I wanted to do a quick Q&A to help people figure out things about the kinds of language learning products that they might want to do or to use. And I wanted to do this today especially because you will probably see a lot of Black Friday language learning deals online. And I've kind of gathered a bunch of them myself, and I've got them on. Actually, I got a team member watching this right now, and he can write a comment that shows the link to the deals, so you can check that out. But I wanted to make sure that I answered questions you guys have about any of those that I've been sharing or any other language learning products. I'm continuing this from Facebook Live Q&A I was doing. So what's on your mind? What are the things that you've been thinking about, that have been holding you back, that you might be considering? Is this the right language product for you? Tell me, write them in the comments. Let me make sure I have enabled comments here very quickly. I believe I have. Oh yeah, by the way, actually, rather than, I just remembered, rather than clicking any links, you'll actually see an eye in the corner, either in this corner or this corner. I don't know, because I'm looking at like a mirror image of myself. You'll see a little eye. If you click that, that'll have a bunch of the Black Friday deals you guys can check out. Okay, so I posted on Instagram I was going to do this, and I got a couple of questions. One of them was, how far do you think you can get when using a textbook to learn a language? So very good question. A lot of us have done this. We've focused entirely on textbooks as our main resource in learning a language. I think you can get very far, especially depending on your goals, because for a lot of people, they may not have the kind of goals I tend to have. I want to be social in the language. I want to meet people. I want to get lots of spoken practice, because that interaction is how I get to know other cultures. So speaking is what it's all about for me. But for a lot of people, reading is the main allure to learning languages. And I know this myself from languages I've reached a very good level in. I've been able to read the original text of some well-known books in that language. And it's been a very positive learning experience for me. Like I managed to read Le Tour du Monde en 80 jours, Around the World in 80 Days, in its original French by Jules Verne. And what I loved about it was there was this one line in it that was kind of snarky to the British, because, you know, the French and the British, they have this whole thing. And that line in the English version is translated very differently, not very differently, but slightly differently, so that the snarkiness isn't as apparent. And I just found that funny, that like if you read it in the original, you kind of get a better sense of what the author is going for. And you know, I've also read Cien Años de Soledad, 100 Years of Solitude, and that's just been an amazing experience. So that is like reading especially can help you a lot in the language. But when it comes to what you use to learn a language to get further, just using a textbook isn't going to do it for you. You need to start using other things. You need to start talking to people in as many ways as you can. So if you click the link in the eye or in the comments or whatever, you will start to see a bunch of stuff that we recommend. So along those lines, I have my own stuff. So that's FI3 and Plus. That's a list of all my favorite free resources that you can find online. And it's kind of like research done for you ahead of time for what you can do to learn your target language. We've also got Why It's Easy series. So why Spanish is easy, German, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Chinese. So why those languages are easy, because a lot of the problems people have is confidence when you're learning a language. You're not very sure of yourself. You feel that you're not smart enough. So rather than make a course for those at that stage, I wanted to focus on encouraging people. And we have Conversation Countdown. It gets you speaking in a week, not fluently, but to get started speaking in a week. So that's the kind of stuff that I have. I bundled that all together for a particular price. The other stuff you'll see in the same link are one thing by Idausa Ness, and this is the Mimic Method. This guy's stuff is amazing. He's got a very convincing accent when he speaks a language, and he explains how he does that. And I was saying on Facebook that I had I felt intimidated by the International Phonetic Alphabet and by these diagrams of how you put your tongue in your mouth. And I didn't really like the idea of going forward with that, and I didn't ever learn any of that. And then I discovered Mimic Method. I went through Adau's stuff, and I saw, wow, it's actually very easy. I felt intimidated by it, but it's not that hard. And what he does is as the name suggests, he mimics people. He focuses on the sounds they make so that you can sound more like a native speaker. We've also got one of my favorite tools I always use when I'm learning language these days, and that's the Innovative Language podcast series. So check that out in the link, and you'll see that we have what is separated into the European Common Framework. So you have A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. They separate it into those levels, and you can listen based on your level, and that kind of increases in difficulty. And this is great because listening comprehension is a big problem a lot of people face, and it's a challenge that you might be able to speak, but when someone speaks back to you, you don't understand anything. And I found before I got into using these podcasts, I would try to just listen to the radio or maybe having the news on or something, and it was always too hard. It was way beyond me. It was like native speakers speaking machine gun fast speeds, and it was too intimidating. So what I had done over the years that had helped me was use a tool like italki and talk with a teacher, and the teacher would just know to slow down for my benefit. But those lessons were paid. I can only do them once in a while. But with the podcast, you listen to them whenever you want. And the lower levels, they initially speak like an exchange very fast, but then they speak slower to explain what happens. So you only need to have that focus for 1 minute. And then you kind of expand as you go up the levels. They might spend the entire time speaking very quickly and talking about natural things. And we've also, so that's the podcast series. I can highly recommend that. Is in the link in the or in the comments. And then finally, we have Add One Challenge, and we have a bunch of things specific for specific languages after that. So yeah, going on now to other questions. Let's see. The last question on Instagram was, what are the best tips for keeping up language learning motivation when you have an off day? Yeah, I've had many off days. For that, I would fall back to what you find easiest. So in my case, I found the podcast series enjoyable to listen to. You can't just use those. You do have to do other stuff, but I would kind of go back to the easy thing so I can at least absorb it. Or if you have to do something that isn't very studious, I would turn on Netflix and select the language I'm learning. Or I would go into YouTube, and if while you're on YouTube, if you look at the bottom, you can change the language of YouTube to be in your target language, in your target country, and then you click trending, you'll see cats on skateboards or whatever the thing that happens to be trending that day. Usually it's people singing and acting crazy, but you will see that in your target language. So if you're having an off day, maybe you don't have the motivation to get focused studying in, but you can still relax in that language. You can still laugh in that language. And a lot of the stuff may not require that high a level in the language, especially if it's visual humor, but you'll still, you have the title, description in the language. You might hear a couple of words that they're saying in the language. So I would try to relax in the language if you're having an off day. Okay. All right. So Mavinder, you've been asking this question a few times. How do I practice learning Japanese on a daily basis? So I have gathered a bunch of, I would actually say for that, best guide for Japanese would be Mastering Japanese by John Fotheringham. So this kind of explains a very detailed step-by-step list of things that you can do to help your Japanese. So if you go to the link that we've shown, and then in the drop-down menu, select Japanese, you'll see that shared there. And his stuff is just amazing. He explains it very well, specifically for Japanese and specifically for Mandarin, he also does. So, I mean, I can't answer that question in a very brief format, so I would say he would answer it for you in an extremely detailed format. So check that out. Okay, so let's see. We have a question in German. Was denkst du über Duolingo? Duolingo is great. It's free. It's constantly improving, and I can't see why you wouldn't want to use it. I haven't had the chance to use it myself so much because it came out after it came out for languages after I'd already learned them to a pretty good level. So I can't speak too much for it, but everyone I have spoken to who have genuinely started to learn a language with Duolingo have said that it's great because you have it in your pocket, you don't have to pay for it. It's a fun gamification, so you get these medals as you go up levels. I don't think you could learn a language only using Duolingo. I think that's not going to happen, but I do think that it can be among the resources that help you move forward. So yeah, why not? Why not download it? Give it a whirl. Okay, I have problems with pronunciation. What can help me? Is a question from Mohammed. With pronunciation, definitely Idausa's mimic method. Again, it's in the link that you'll see and the I in the comment. And he explained pronunciation to me in a way I came across this stuff 10 years after I had started learning languages, and he explained pronunciation in such a logical way about because pronunciation, we always think you're like, oh, specifically getting individual letters right, but a lot of it is also the musicality and the flow of a language. So in that case, I would say that you want to mimic how it sounds. So one thing that Idausa did that I really like when I'm trying to really get good with a language is to not just try to sound like them, but to mimic their music. So if someone might say, I don't know, yo soy de España, then I would kind of think of the music of that. Sorry about the sirens at the back. I live in downtown Manhattan, and there's lots of ambulances and fires and everything. So I got to deal with that. But yeah, I would mimic the music of somebody speaking, and that's a trick that I've learned from Idausa. Love his stuff. If pronunciation specifically is something you have a problem with, check his stuff out. Okay, John, LOL, great name, says, what's your opinion on Pimsleur? Okay, so the Pimsleur approach to language learning, I've tested this out myself. I happened to use it with Hungarian, and I think it is a very good product, especially because it does focus on something very well. Too many things try to spread themselves out. It focuses on the on teaching you via audio. It doesn't really have written stuff. The only catch is because it follows a particular structured process, it has its own script. So when I was using it for Hungarian specifically, it was teaching me how to say words about my wife and my children, and I wasn't married at the time, and I don't have children. So it wasn't very relevant to me, and I felt that it was kind of based on an old thinking that the people most likely to buy the product are businessmen who like travel for business and are more likely to live those situations. So I felt it was a little limited in that way, but in other ways it did very well. So it's something definitely worth considering. But nowadays, when it comes to listening, if you like learning that way, I can't recommend enough the Innovative Language podcast series. So check that out wherever you see the links for it. And they have it for like 30 something languages. And I can just highly recommend that one. It's definitely way better than Pimsleur because of the scope. Covers so many different things. So there's a lot of lessons within it that I don't use because they might be about something I'm not going to talk about. But then I will find stuff that I will talk about. For instance, I just last weekend went to Brazil. I went there for a friend's wedding. And it's been a long time since I've had consistent practice in Portuguese. So I used the podcast series and then used the Portuguese pod. And I managed to find specific lessons that were relevant to wedding vocabulary. And that was great because rather than just listening generically to kind of generally improve my Portuguese, I had a specific thing I could do, and I could learn vocabulary about family members and honeymoon and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of scope of things that you can listen to is one of the biggest benefits of it. Whereas something like Pimsleur has to follow a very limited scope that they try to make as relevant as they can to as many people as they can. And so in that case, I would kind of say that's one of the downsides of it. Okay, so let's see. Ankit, do you have any tips to memorize a language? Yeah, I'm a big fan of Memrise, MEMORISE.com. and they use mnemonics. Mnemonics are great tools that help you like link in your mind the sound of one word to another. So they do all about that. I have a couple of blog posts about it. That's probably the way I would recommend that. By the way, everyone, keep asking your questions. Love seeing them. Keep them coming. I'll try to get through as many as I can here. Okay, Bo Waycott says, how important are curse words and slang in language learning? This always depends on you. So I would say, like for instance, in one of my language learning projects, when I started learning French, I found that I really needed to learn formal French a lot more because I was working as an engineer in a company in Paris, and pretty much all the French I was using was with my coworkers, and we would use vous. It was a very formal situation. And so because of that, I ended up not learning a lot of slang and curse words initially. I did learn them later when I went to Quebec to continue improving my French. But in that situation, learning curse and slang words would not have been very useful to me. I think a lot of people try to learn that first because it's fun, and if you enjoy it, that's great. But I don't think it's necessarily going to help you communicate very much unless you're in a situation where you're likely to use it a lot. So my Spanish, for instance, I went out with a lot of young Spaniards to fiestas, and they tended to use a lot more curse words. So it was more beneficial for me to learn those curse words so I could interact with them. But I wouldn't learn them just because I feel cool to curse. It's more like, is it relevant? Is it useful? That should always be the question you want to ask. Okay. Next question is, Helen, do you know any places you can find conversations with normal people from different countries? Yeah, there's lots of things you can do for that. So I'd say probably in terms of conversations with other learners, I would try to check out the Add One challenge. This is kind of people who intensively over several months try to learn a language together. That's one of the links that we're sharing today. And that kind of, you join that community and you bounce ideas off each other. You share your language learning project. Several of them will be learning the same language as you. And then other than that, definitely italki. Italki will connect you for free with people who are learning your language while you learn theirs. So you do a free exchange, and they have a community you can ask questions on. And then if you can afford it, you can get teachers to give you private lessons. So those are the two that I would give to answer that question. All right, Manatasia, what do you think about listening to music in your target language? Okay, so listening to music, it depends on what you're doing with that. Are you like actively listening, or are you passively listening? Because I made a huge mistake when I was learning German, that I made it too passive. I had the radio on in the background, so I was hearing German songs, but I wasn't really interacting with them. They were just there, and I kind of would recognize the music. I could hum along to it. But if you want to incorporate listening into a successful language learning project, it has to be more interactive. So you have to be actually pausing the audio and making sure you understood it and replaying it. So I might spend like a whole hour working on a single song because I want to make sure I understand. I might have the lyrics online. I might like replay something so I can hear that pronunciation, because maybe they're doing some form of combining letters that aren't the way you would expect them to. And like there's a lot of things that you wouldn't know what to do when it comes to hearing the lyrics of a song. If you listen to a song for 3 minutes, it's not as useful as to really listen to it, to study it, to play it over, to understand the words. And it can be a lot of work to do that. And that's why, again, I would say that helping you with your listening, it's probably best if you take one of these podcasts from that you'll see linked in the description, because that's what they do. They do a lot of that stuff that I was doing myself after I made that mistake with German that I tried in other languages, of manually cutting some audio and replaying little parts of it till I understood it better. But then if you enjoy music specifically, make sure you have the lyrics, and if possible, a good translation. Run it through your teacher, because a lot of those things may use slang. They're not very easy to directly translate. Google Translate will very likely do a bad job in a lot of those, because songs good songs if they have complex ways of describing things. So talk with a teacher to get the lyrics out correctly, to understand them, and then try and go through it as a true learning process. Okay, I hope that answers the question. The Cubinator, have you ever tried learning Finnish? Well, sorry if I'm getting any static from the microphone. Hopefully you guys are seeing that okay, or hearing me okay. Finnish, I have not learned Finnish yet. I have learned Hungarian, which I believe is in the same language family. And so like I kind of, someone showed me some Finnish and I like recognized a word from Hungarian, which is surprising because they're like separated. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that I talk about does apply to many different languages. Is speak from day one, find native speakers, find good resources, actively listen to it, work on your pronunciation. And that does apply to different languages. Finnish, I believe there's a Finnish pod actually, and I may be wrong about that, but definitely check the link I've given and see if Finnish is in the drop-down menu, because we would have shared it if there is for that specifically. Otherwise, find a Finnish native speaker, probably on italki, and see what you can learn with them. Okay, so what was your favorite language to learn? This one's tricky, but I would probably say, I'm always torn for this. There's two languages I want to say for this. One is Brazilian Portuguese, and I got to go back to Brazil recently, and it's not necessarily the linguistics of the language. A lot of people say they like specific languages because of how they sound or grammatical features, which definitely doesn't float my boat. But one thing I did enjoy was the people, and I make that association when I learn a language with those people. And I found Brazilians to be very friendly, very easy to get to know. And that kind of inspired me for getting out there and meeting them. So whenever I hear Portuguese, I have that association. The other one I like is American Sign Language. I found sign language to be a fascinating language to learn, very expressive. It's great for meeting those people, and there are things you can say in sign language that you can't really say in spoken languages, the visual part of it, which is missing from spoken language. So those are my two favorite languages. Again, that's a very personal thing. I wouldn't really say that means you should go learn those languages specifically. It's if you have a good experience with the speakers of the language, you're going to love that language. Okay. Let's see. So do you have any products to help you remember kanji? Yes. Again, if you go to the drop-down menu in the link that we share, there is one of the products that we use helps. It's called Skritter, and I found this very, very useful, both for Chinese and Japanese, for Chinese Hanzi and Japanese kanji. And it helps you to write the characters, including getting your stroke order correct. In my case, I disabled that because I didn't care about the stroke order. I just wanted to get the character looking right if I wanted to write something down quickly. Because I wasn't taking an exam. I know a lot of people would say, Benny, how could you dare not learn the stroke order? But yeah, you can fix the app to do that, and it's great. I felt like I had a magic wand when I'd be writing the characters, because I have all these like fairy dust around them or something, which is actually very good because it encourages it to use it more. It's kind of less generic and boring. So check that out in the resources. Again, everyone, if you just joined, click the eye in one of these corners and you see a link that shares a lot of my favorite stuff. The majority of it is on a special Black Friday deal that they have a price reduction. So if you're going to get it, you got to get it like today or tomorrow. I mean, some of them are expiring very quickly, and they will help you learn that language and do it at a reduced price. So you save a lot of money if you get them right now. Okay, so moving on. What are the best ways to gain and keep hold of new vocabulary in a language that you're A2 or B1 in? Very good question. So this is tricky for me because whenever I've reached an A2, B1 level in a language, I find that that's still below this threshold, that if I get past that, if I get to B2, I feel like I can actually take a break. I can go away for a few months. I can focus on other languages, maybe even learn a new language if I want to, and then come back, and I haven't lost a lot. But if you're at the upper beginner, lower intermediate level, it's hard because your lack of practice means you're going to go down very fast. And I found with languages I've reached that level, and I've worked so hard to get there, very quickly I'm going to lose it. So practice is what you need for anything. You need practice. If you don't have the opportunity to speak very much, get a lot of listening practice, because that's still maintaining it in your mind, even if you're not actively speaking it. If you've reached a certain level, you keep it at that level if you're listening very often. And again, the podcast series that we link to is going to help you with that. It's a lot of fun to listen to. It's very easy to find a small section of like 30 minutes in your week to make sure you're checking it out. So that's what I would say for that. All right. So Jill Roberts asks, quick question for listening for German with German Pod 101. Which level for the podcasts, and is the discount good for a particular, for a month? Good enough. Okay, yeah, so we've got a question here about like if you want to get just a single month. You can do that, in fact. You can subscribe for 1 month and then download as much as you can and spend a while going through that. I like to keep on top of things, get the latest stuff as it comes in. If you want, though, you can just do a single month, get as much stuff as you want offline. It means after that month passes, you can't use the app to access it. So you have to kind of manually send it into something else to listen off. But you can do just a single month, and you'll get a great use out of it for that. But which level? I don't know if you mean which level you would listen to, because it does the European Common Framework of lower and upper, beginner, intermediate, advanced. But if you mean which level would you go for, again, like in terms of premium, they have premium plus. That depends on what you need, because the higher levels have stuff like their own built-in flashcard functionality and access to a larger database of stuff and all these extra features. They even have options to like talk to their own teachers. So you should check it out, see what resources are offered and what would be most relevant to your learning situation. Okay. Mariana says, any tricks for memorizing conjugations? For conjugations, it depends on your level. If you're an absolute beginner, I would say do not worry about that. I like to get into momentum when I'm starting to learn language. And sometimes that means you have to speak a little bit like Tarzan. So with Spanish, I did not speak Spanish for 6 whole months because I was so worried about things like conjugation. And I thought to myself, oh, unless I know the subjunctive version of this word, I can't possibly say it. But one day I decided to let that go, and I would say, yo querer, which doesn't make any sense because that's like I to want. But I was able to use that. People understood what I meant, and it got me very far. So a lot of the stuff that we talk about here gets people into using a language immediately, and it presumes that it's okay to make mistakes. And I really want to encourage people for that. But if you're past that and you're at an intermediate stage and you want to learn things like conjugation, I find a lot of that, one aspect that it has helped, I should say, is seeing what the patterns are. So one thing that I go through, if you're learning Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, German, or Chinese, in my FI3M Plus package, one of the things I have is why that language is easy, why English is easy as well, I forgot, Spanish is easy, and so on. And in that thing, I talk about tricks and shortcuts. So with Spanish, I found that conjugation, I rather than learning every conjugation for every single word, you see there's patterns, and you just need to understand what are those patterns. So in that word I said, querer, it changes to be yo quiero, I want, and that version of want. And that makes no sense if you're just coming to it from a beginner. But what I found was if it is the stressed syllable, then it's going to change to be 2 letters instead of 1. Spanish does this very often. It's not a hard, fast rule. It doesn't work for every word. But when the word changes, it's because it's a stressed syllable. So as you're learning Spanish, you will see that when there's an R at the end of the word, then that R syllable gets the stress. So it's querer, querer. The second syllable is like the one you stress. But then when it ends in an O, quiero, then that quiere, that's stressed, and that gets like elongated. And this works for a lot of different words. I don't know, the words with an O that change to UE. You guys who are learning Spanish will know what I'm talking about. All of that follows that pattern. So by learning the pattern, you just learn a list of rules, like 10 rules, for instance. That shortcut is going to get you a lot further for a lot more of the conjugations in other aspects. So again, in the why Spanish is easy, why French is easy, and so on, I talk about those patterns, and that's one of the things that I share in the link. But you can start to figure out yourself, and a good course will tell you about that eventually if you study it long enough. So I hope that answers your question about conjugation. Okay. Richard asks, do you ever read novels to improve vocabulary, or do other ways work better for you? For vocabulary, yeah, I would read, but not as a beginner, because I made this mistake with Spanish. I always tell people I tried to read Lord of the Rings when I was a beginner Spanish learner. The title, by the way, is El Señor de los Anillos, of course. And that was just the dumbest idea I've ever had. It was just such a stupid idea, because I was a beginner and I was not ready for anything even slightly difficult. And that was a very complex book. And it took me weeks to get to page 2, because I would be like using the dictionary and I would see a weird form of a verb. So I'd like go off and like study that. And it would like have so much extra work. I was definitely not reading the book. I was just like stopping myself every other word. And that's not a very useful thing to do. However, if you've got enough momentum, you've already been speaking a language, you've reached a confident stage, reading is amazing. I mentioned on Facebook earlier that I've been lucky enough to read Jules Verne, Le Tour du Monde en 80 jours, Around the World in 80 Days. I've read Cien Años de Soledad, 100 Years of Solitude in the Spanish, both of these in the original language, and I love it. It's such an amazing experience. But on your question of vocabulary, I still come across words I don't know, because I'm not at a perfect level in those languages. I am a very high level. I've got like a C2 diploma in Spanish, and I was getting ready for one in French. So I have that level, but I will still come across the words that like catch me out. And that's fine, because it's only once every few pages, and it doesn't like interrupt my flow. I'll just be like, oh, what's that word? I'll look it up and I'll see it. And then what I would do that helps a lot is anytime I see a word that's new, I will copy that word, put it into an Excel file, and add it to my Anki word list. This is a process that helps me learn through flashcards. So if you're interested in that, in the FI3M Plus, I explain how I absorb vocabulary this way. I have like videos that explain that whole process, or you can give it a try yourself. And that's kind of what I would say. So reading is great, but as a beginner, if you really like reading, I would consider comic books. You know, comic books are great because they're visual, or manga if you're learning Japanese, and that kind of gets you into the language in a different way. Or have little bursts, like change the language on your operating system, on your phone, change your YouTube language that I mentioned before. So loads of things you can do. Okay, Van Sensei has a question about Irish. Is it different in Irish across Ireland, like Limerick and Wexford and Dublin? Yes, it is. I don't want to get into that too much because I want to focus on language products in this video. But yeah, I've learned Ulster Irish, that's from the north, and it's different to what we tend to learn more in schools is Galway Irish, but not too different, not so different so that you don't understand. But yeah, there is differences. There are differences. So check that out, and I got some blog posts that might help you with that. Okay. Alan says, do you know any good products for learning Serbian? I would have to say the best thing you can do is find a native speaker for that. And you will not find difficulty finding a native speaker if you go on a site like italki, for sure. And that's going to be your product. You know, your product is a person. If you have specific issues, because remember, that's the goal here. The goal isn't to find one thing to study and then just study that forever. The goal is to use your language with other people. But when you are doing it with other people and you see you have challenges, that's when you use a product to fix those challenges. So your product is never the purpose of learning languages, just a tool to get you to speak with a person. So if you find you're not able to understand them, then you can find streamed radio in that language. If you find you've got you don't really have a good general language learning approach, then I've got some advice that I apply to every language, regardless of what it is. But the best thing you can do is find a native speaker and see what your problems are, and then from there work on those problems. And I got stuff that helps people for specific problems, and I really hope that they help you guys out. I don't know a lot about Serbian, so I can't help you with that particular language, but I hope that advice kind of points you in a good direction. Yuki asked, do you recommend learning 2 or more languages at the same time? No, I do not recommend learning 2 or more languages at the same time. I know people who have done it, and they are very smart people. They're much smarter than I am. I learn languages as my main things, like my blog and everything, and I still can't imagine trying to learn 2 languages from scratch at the same time. It is a lot easier to work on 2 languages you already speak well, to maintain them and maybe push them up a notch. But if you're starting from the beginning, focus on 1 language. Just 1 language. Focus on that till you get it to an upper intermediate level, and then start your next language. And when you've got both of them at an upper intermediate level where you can have confident conversations with people, then you can work on both of them at the same time to push them up, and they're not going to interfere with one another. But you'll find as a beginner, if you do 2 languages, they're going to interfere. I feel like when I'm learning a language, if I get it up to that B2 level, that upper intermediate level, it's like I built a solid wall around it, and my other languages aren't going to seep in through that wall. Whereas when it's below that, it's kind of like a mushy little bush or something, and a language can jump over and I can mix up words. So that's for me. Maybe you can learn 2 languages at once. If you can, you're way smarter than I am. But for most people, I recommend 1 language. Stick to 1 language, get it good. It doesn't mean you have to spend 50 years on it, but if you're focused on it for several months, you can get it to a level that you can call solid. Your work isn't finished, but you've reached a level now that you can go back to another language and bring that up to the same level. Okay? All right, so let's see remaining questions. Have you gone through any of the Mimic Method products? And if so, which one and how was it? I went through Mimic Method German because I feel that out of my best languages that I can speak well, I can understand a lot, I feel that my accent in German, relative to how good my accent is in French or Spanish or Italian, my accent in German is not as good, because there have been cases where if someone doesn't know me, they don't know who I am and I just met them, they might think I'm a native speaker in certain contexts if I speak Spanish and French to them. Like someone from Quebec might think I'm from France, someone from Colombia might think I'm from Spain. It's happened, but in German, no one's ever thought that I was a native German speaker. So that's something I want to work on. So I found Edaus's Mimic Method really good for that. And I'm still working through it, but I start to see the issues that I have, that there are processes he explains for getting those tricky sounds, for having a musicality to speak more like a German would. And I found it so useful. I feel like I sound a lot better. And if I keep working on it, then one day I'll hear those wondrous words of someone who'll be so surprised and be like, oh my God, I thought you were from Berlin. That's the dream. That's the dream. And yeah, so I've used Mimic Method for German, and I found it very, very useful. And I'd love to actually use it for some of my other languages. Like he has for Portuguese especially. I feel like I want to tweak my accent on that one. So yeah, for sure, I can highly recommend it from using it. And I also know Edaus. He's the coolest guy ever. Okay, so have you on? Any good products for learning Scottish Gaelic? I can't say I know any products for that, so sorry. I want to move forward. Any final questions, guys? Write them down, because I'm going to wrap this up now just in the next couple of minutes. And again, if you like any of these things that I've been talking about, click the link in the in the description and check out the Black Friday deals, because we have reduced the price on a lot of these things, either me personally or I've talked to the people who run these products, and they've reduced the price just for Black Friday. And a lot of these are the best things you can do to solve specific problems in language learning. So check them out and get them today so you have full access to everything before the prices go back up. So I'm going to go through your final questions now. What products should I use to learn French if I'm a native Spanish speaker? Okay, very interesting question from Slyn. So the kind of issues you'd face learning a language in the same family are very different. So in that case, I would say you're probably not going to have so many problems with understanding. So you might not need to work on that so much, but the accent is definitely. So I've met a lot of Spanish speakers who, especially, I can tell instantly that they're from Spain when they speak French. Like, it just comes across immediately, the rhythm and tonality, the kind of things that I was talking about previously. So I think that can, especially in French, that can cause a lot of difficulty in understanding because the accents are so different. If anything, I would say English speakers actually have a little advantage over that in learning like pronunciations and some things in French. So I would say for sure, check out Idausa's Mimic Method for French that I've linked to. And that'll help you kind of tweak some of the issues you'll have. It is made from an English perspective, but a lot of the sounds are like, it covers all of the sounds in French. So you might need to like skip some things that you're already good at, but then you'll see how to get the French R and how to get the rhythm of a French sentence. And that's the stuff you'll work even more on. Okay. Yeah, Callum's got a question. How often does FrenchPod release new lessons? On iTunes, there's only 52 lessons. So iTunes has their absolute free version. So they release free lessons that you can get like that are limited, and you'll see them on iTunes. You can sign up, like follow the link and sign up to them. You will get free lessons that you can listen to right now. The catch is you're not going to get the lessons they tend to release once a week per language level. So sometimes they actually release several in a single week because they release one for absolute beginners, one for advanced, and so on. So you're not. That's why you don't see so many publicly. They actually have like a database of hundreds because they've been doing this for years and for many different topics. The 52 ones, they may be like basic topics, like for a tourist, for instance, because that's like what more people are likely to be looking up. But specifics, like I said, for Portuguese, I got to use the wedding specific stuff, and you're not going to find that like publicly on iTunes or on their free site. So that's why I signed up for the paid version of it, because I get to access specific content that I know I'm going to be able to apply to my own situation. So there's loads, there's like hundreds of them that you'll see. I think on their sales page, they might actually mention how much there are. Okay, all right. So, okay, the questions are starting to get more generic now. So like I don't want to kind of talk about language learning techniques, but more of these products. So I think we're going to wrap it up right here. I hope everyone has enjoyed this. I hope I've answered most of your questions, because I've been doing this for almost 2 hours now, because I started on Facebook. And I appreciate you coming. Black Friday is a time of year when a lot of products all over the internet get reduced. So check out language learning products. Click the I in the corner. Click the link in the description. I give you my favorite ones. I give you stuff I've done that I'm very proud of, that I think can solve very specific problems people have. Stuff that Idausa has done that is just amazing for pronunciation. The Add One challenge from Brian that give you a community of people who will help you. The Innovative Language podcasts that are so amazing, that are very, very clever in helping us to improve our listening comprehension. And then loads of others. There's a drop-down menu for specific languages you're learning. You will get even more than that, like the Japanese and Mandarin guides, detailed guides from John Fotheringham, and a lot of other stuff if you're learning English or any other language. So check that out. I hope you've enjoyed this this live hangout. I hope I answered your questions, and otherwise, it's been great talking to you guys. I hope you like my cheesy hat, because I'm getting into my pre-time traveling ghosts who kind of cheer me up and like bring me to the ghost of bring me to the future to see how that's like. And then I stop saying bah humbug. You know, that's what it says. But otherwise, I'm actually having a great day. Very glad to have talked to everybody, and happy language learning.